Behind every crisis, big or small, we're facing right now, both collectively and individually, you will usually find a form of ideology, usually unseen ideology, unconscious ideology. And so I'm planning a series of videos on this channel, probably also a series of posts on Substack about ideology. This is a topic that is very dear to my heart, and I had planned today on starting with some groundwork concepts on that topic. I had planned to explain the four basic types of truth in the framework I will be using, but instead of going through the whole thing, I will focus only on one aspect, a key aspect, which is the idea of poetic truth, which might seem perhaps counterintuitive. It doesn't quite mean probably what you think it does, but it's very effective. It's very useful as a concept, poetic truth, to figure out like what's actually going on, like the mechanisms of ideology and the traps that people who use ideology as a form of manipulation, because that's what it is. Well, what are the levers they use? What do they subvert? What do they pervert? Okay, what are the tricks, the Jedi mind tricks they use? Okay, so today we're focusing on poetic truth. What are the four other types, just to have some context? Basically, for this video, I had planned on calling them sensory truth, which is what your eyes actually perceive. Okay, so if you're in the woods and you see a ball of fur, okay, was that a bear? Your eyes saw something, but your mind isn't sure what it was. Was it a bear or was it not a bear? Okay, was it a bear or an optical, I guess you could say an optical illusion. So that would be sensory truth. That usually doesn't come up in ideology so much, but we'll see when we get there. Second form of truth is what we usually call truth, which is reason, rational truth. That's mainly composed of two elements, which is a premise and the logical, use we make of that premise. Okay. One example would be, just quickly, okay, is there a bear in the woods? Okay. Well, if there is a bear in the wood and I put my tent right next to where I saw the bear, then I will probably be eaten by a bear. Okay, so that would be logical. But it depends on the validity of my premise. Like whether there is a bear or not makes a big difference to the rest of my reasoning. And if I say something like, okay, if there is a bear and I put my tent here, the Dodgers will win the World Series. Well, obviously that's not logical. So that would be an example of a non-rational reasoning, if you like. So that would be how we would look at truth and untruth in terms of reason, the rational. And again, that's usually what we refer to as truth. But this is a mistake. Because, okay, so first of all, the four types are sensory, rational, poetic, and mythological. And if you look at that, all four, they actually correspond to a part of what makes human beings human beings. So we have senses to look at the outside world. We have reason, the mind. We have emotions and feelings, which is the realm of poetic truth. And we have a deep psyche, which is the realm of the mythological, which again is a topic for another day. So what about poetic truth? So I will just, to keep things simple and quick, I will actually mainly be using an example, which is conspiracy theories. Okay. If we were to give a definition of poetic truth, okay, it would be something that feels emotionally true, okay, but is factually or logically false, okay, but still, this is the crucial bit, still carries a form of truth value, okay, there is still a truth being expressed there. Maybe it's being expressed unskillfully, which is very frequently the case. Maybe the narrative, okay, that is trying to put forth this poetic truth is ramshackle and clumsy and based on dubious assumptions. This is also very frequent, but nevertheless, usually when people, for instance, again, conspiracy theories, well, usually when people say stuff like, oh yeah, well, 9/11 was an inside job, and, whatever, JFK, was killed by the CIA or something like that, right? Narratively, collectively, okay, the official version is there are two types of people: the crazy people and the people who don't believe in conspiracy theories. Okay, so conspiracy theory as an expression is always used to mean something crazy people say that is completely insane, and the fact that they are saying it proves they are insane. And what is the implied, corollary here? What is the underlying narrative here? The underlying narrative is, well, obviously this means the official version is true. Okay, so this is kind of like the basic narrative, which, as we will see in later videos, is how you recognize that it is ideological. Okay, because ideology presents itself as reasonable, like as reason, as logic, as grounded fact. But it never is, actually. It uses bits and bobs of that, but to build its own ideologically driven narrative. Okay, so it's a false reason. It's a form of sophistry, essentially, and it does that through implied meaning. Okay, that it hides, like kind of like a hidden pill, in like a bowl of sugar or something like that. What is the poetic truth of conspiracy theories? Okay, so people will say JFK was killed by the CIA or something like that. And so the problem, obviously, is that we don't have facts, like unarguable facts, to prove that. Okay, and in reason, in logic, if you want to have 100% certainty, if you want your conclusion to be 100% certain, you need to have 100% certain premise. Okay, you can't have 100% conclusion if your premise is only probable or even not so probable. Okay. And the problem usually we find with conspiracy theories is that almost by definition, people don't have enough clues, and all we have are clues, and so some vague inferences, and okay, maybe somebody saw George W. Bush, whatever. So we have bits of information, but we always end up like that crazy guy with the post-it notes and the bits of string, right? Okay. Because we don't have enough facts, so we're drawing conclusions that are flimsy. Okay, and so for that reason, first of all, it's very easy to go crazy because we lose sight of the fact that our premise is not certain; it is only probable, and because there is a mechanism in the mind that kind of can go crazy if it goes too much in that kind of direction of building upon successive layers of dubious premises taken as absolute facts. Okay, for all those reasons, people who believe in quote unquote conspiracy theories can oftentimes come off as pretty goofy, and so for that reason, it's very easy to laugh at them. Okay. And it's very easy to say, yeah, I don't think the Rothschilds, built a flying saucer because they have, giant lizards at the bottom of the ocean. I mean, yeah, it's pretty easy to pick at the stuff that only ends up sounding logical to the quote-unquote conspiracy theorist, because he's made so many logical leaps and bounds, to arrive at his conclusion. Like Dan Brown, the Da Vinci Code, that's what conspiracy theory is like. So you have a like a vague premise, and you add another vague premise, and you add another uncertain premise, and you keep building on that, and you end up with, oh yeah, Jesus was a Merovingian or something like that. Jesus had children, and it's all conspiracy. But yeah, so that's where the crazy comes in. But still, I talk about poetic truth, and I expounded a lot on that because people use contempt to shut conspiracy theorists up, and they used the expression conspiracy theorist as a pejorative, and this is intellectually dishonest. And again, it is ideologically driven, okay? Because when the people are doing that, they are saying, these are crazy people, and why are they crazy? Because they don't believe the official truth, okay? But what is the core narrative of the conspiracy theory? We're always being manipulated and lied to, by like rich and powerful people who treat us like cattle and do whatever they want. Well, guess what, people? We are always being manipulated and lied to, and it does seem to me pretty convincing. It seems to me a sound premise. I would not say it is an absolute fact, but it seems a very sound premise based on the documentation we have, to presume that it's mostly rich, powerful people who manipulate us, along with every cheap politician on earth, along with marketing agencies. Like, we're always being lied to, day in, day out, And what are conspiracy theorists expressing? They are expressing the poetic truth of the fact that we are always being lied to. So they're not aware that that's what they're doing, but fundamentally, who is in the right here? Between the conspiracy theorists and the people who debunk them? Well, in the general narrative, the conspiracy theorists, like the details, okay, is it the lizard people beneath the Pentagon in their time machine? Well, probably not. I mean, maybe, but probably not, okay? But yeah, so on the facts, they're wrong, and sometimes the logic is very dubious, and, sure. But who is fundamentally in the truth between those people and the people who debunk them, who say, oh, no, Pentagon is always telling the truth? Well, they may lie sometimes, but they have our best interests at heart, and no, the system works, the system is good, and everything is fine, which is totally the underlying narrative of quote-unquote debunkers, okay? If you look at any conspiracy theory movie, like the Parallax View or Independence Day or Hangar 18 or stuff like that, which is like the subgenre. Well, if you really look at the narrative of that subgenre, it's always, the crazy guy ends up being right because his crazy theory ends up being true. But what the movie is always telling us, in fact, if you look at them, especially like Parallax View is a classic of the genre, it's really, in your face how much it's that detail. The underlying narrative is always, only crazy people believe in conspiracy theories. It just so happens that in this exceptional instance, it was true. But like, for instance, in Parallax View, there's an evil corporation that's doing, nefarious things, but the fundamental regime is still good, okay? And this is only 10 years after JFK was shot. Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy and all these people. I mean, so Parallax View is an example of a movie that on the surface is telling you that, sure, you have doubts about the official version in general. And so I'm on your side. I'm obviously on your side, the side of rational, cool people. And thus, as your friend who is on your side of the rational, cool people, well, you have doubts, but surely you will agree that the official version is true, basically, and that everyone who doubts the official version is a crazy kook, which is the opinion of the Warren Beatty character at the beginning. Yeah, and then, yes, having accepted that, then we will see, an accidental conspiracy, you see. But yeah, so that is the poetic lie of the movie. That is the ideological lie of the movie. Because the truth, again, is on the side of the conspiracy theorists. They're wrong about every detail, usually, frequently. Okay, they may be, or maybe they're not, but that's not the point. The point is that their intuition is true. Okay, and they are using a narrative to explain poetically the truth of it. So, and the problem with conspiracy theories as a phenomenon is that they don't realize that this is what's happening. Okay, but yeah, poetic truth. If you're living in an emotionally manipulative relationship with a parent or a spouse or something, well, it's very possible that the abuser or the manipulator is never saying something explicitly bad. There are forms of abuse which are entirely based on manipulation, which is very hard to express, rationally, but which is immediately palpable. So if you're the person, on the receiving end of such a form of manipulation, you end up sounding crazy. Okay, if you try to explain it, you end up sounding like you're exaggerating and putting things together that don't belong together, which is part of what some very skillful manipulators do achieve. I mean, that's a big technique that some people will use, right? Or institutions or entire countries, will use. Again, in the case of the abusive relationship, you might say, crazy things to try to explain to other people what's going on, especially if you're very distraught, and nervous and you feel like you're taking crazy pills, right? But still, poetically, what you're saying is fundamentally true. There's something deeply wrong in the relationship and I can't put my finger on it, but this is the best way I've found to express it. And it may sound crazy and it may not be factual because I took bits of semi-evidence, and examples I could find. I built a kind of narrative to try to put forth to explain, what's so manipulative or abusive about it, you see. So yeah, if somebody listens to such a person and says, well, it's all crazy talk and these things are logically, not related and it's all logical fallacies, well, you're missing the actual, real poetic truth of what the person is expressing, you see. It's not rational, but it's often quite profound, actually. And the tragedy often is precisely that people are expressing a form of inner truth, but it's almost always not skillful because the emotions are very difficult to navigate, and situations themselves can be very complex. Yeah, but as human beings, we are fundamentally narrative creatures. That's the main thing we do, and making sense of situations through stories is the main way we have of making sense. And in many instances, that's why we tell stories like conspiracy theories or stories that are factually untrue in the details of it, but have a profound, deeper truth that cannot and must not be ignored. Because ignoring it is ignoring the real truth of the situation, even if the way it's expressed is clumsy and the sentences are false on the surface, you see. So yeah, and the whole trick, and I'll finish on this, like ideologically, on like quote unquote the mainstream media, but every Like everyone does it. Like the non-mainstream media are usually just as bad. Yeah, the whole trick is precisely to point at the fallacies or the weaknesses of the narrative, but they're picking apart, the metaphors that the person is using, and the person may not be aware that he's using a metaphor, he or she or whatever. But they are doing that precisely because they want and they choose to ignore what is desperately trying to be expressed, and again, what must be expressed. And again, a big part of the manipulation is that. And then if somebody comes and says, "Well, I hear you, my friend," that's how you get, demagogues and dictators. They don't make stuff up. Okay, they just give voice to what needs to be voiced, and they surf on that. And then they do whatever they want. That's the trick. Okay. So the poetic truth. We'll talk more about that, but for today that was it. I have a Patreon if you want to support my work. Those who do, you're the greatest. I love you very much. I love all of you, but very special thanks to everyone on Patreon. I also have a new coaching program if you're going through very difficult personal situations, like individuation stuff, like deep psychological stuff, that sort of thing. I went through it, so now I help people who went through it. The link is in the description anyway. But so this is mainly, this is my philosophy channel, and the big, one of the biggest, quote-unquote, philosophical problems we have, like ethical and political problems, hence philosophical problems we have, is the ideological trap. So that's why we'll be talking about it more on this channel, and why we started with the poetic truth. Have a great day. Take care. Keep watching the skies. Live long and prosper. Take care. And read the books.